Queen Alara stepped off her royal transport and onto the human station called Meridian 7. Her silver robes swept across the polished floor as her bodyguards flanked her on both sides. She'd made this trip 1,000 times before. Trade negotiations. Diplomatic pleasantries. The usual dance between species trying to coexist in a crowded galaxy. But nothing felt usual anymore. Not since Tavern died. 5 years. 5 long years since the soul bond had been ripped away. The Velcari people bonded for life, their minds and hearts intertwined in ways humans couldn't begin to understand. When your bonded partner died, part of you died with them. Her people called it half-death. Living, breathing, but never whole again. Alara forced herself to focus. The human delegation was talking about mineral exports and shipping routes. She nodded at the appropriate moments, said the right words, played her role. Inside, she felt nothing but the familiar ache that never left. Your Majesty, if you'll follow us this way, the human station commander said. Rebecca something. Alara hadn't bothered to remember the full name. We've prepared a tour of our facilities before the formal negotiations begin. More walking. More smiling. More pretending she cared about any of this. They turned down a side corridor, taking a shortcut through the maintenance section. The humans apologized for the less-than-royal route, but Alara waved them off. She'd seen worse. At least it was quiet here, away from the crowds. That's when she saw him. A human man in a faded blue jumpsuit, down on one knee mopping the floor. Nothing special. Just another station worker doing his job. He didn't even look up as the royal procession approached. Alara's feet stopped moving. Her breath caught in her throat. Her telepathic senses, usually so controlled, flared wide open in shock. The man looked up, probably wondering why everyone had gone silent. His eyes met hers. Tavern's eyes. Tavern's face. Tavern's exact height and build. The same strong jawline. The same slight crook in his nose from an old injury. Even the way he tilted his head slightly to the left when confused. Your Majesty? One of her bodyguards touched her arm. Are you unwell? Alara couldn't speak. Couldn't move. Her mind was screaming that this was impossible. Tavern was dead. She'd watched them prepare his body for the funeral rites. She'd felt the soul bond shatter like glass in her mind. But there he was, standing right in front of her, wearing human clothes, looking at her like she was crazy. Is there a problem? The man asked. His voice was wrong. American accent, rough around the edges. Not Tavern's smooth diplomatic tones. But the face was exact. Who are you? Alara managed to whisper. The man glanced at the other humans, clearly confused by the attention. Jake Morrison, ma'am. Maintenance Division. I keep the water systems running and the floors clean. Can I help you with something? Jake. A human name. A human job. But Alara's telepathic senses were going wild. Beneath the surface confusion and awkwardness radiating from this man, there was something else. Something that shouldn't exist. A faint echo of Tavern's psychic signature. She'd know that mental fingerprint anywhere. It had been intertwined with her own for decades. And now it was somehow emanating from a human janitor who'd probably never left this backwater station. This isn't possible, Alara said, her voice shaking. Her guards immediately went on alert, hands moving to weapons. The human delegation started talking all at once, asking questions, trying to understand what was happening. Jake took a step back, raising his hands. Look, I don't know what's going on, but I'm just the maintenance guy. If I did something wrong, I'm sorry. I'll just go back to work and stay out of your way. No. Alara's voice came out sharper than she intended. You will not leave. I need answers. Rebecca, the station commander, moved between them. Your Majesty, with all due respect, Jake is a civilian employee. If there's been some offense, I'm sure we can resolve this through proper channels. This man carries the psychic imprint of my dead husband, Alara said flatly. There are no proper channels for that. The corridor went dead silent. Jake's face showed pure confusion. I'm sorry, what? I carry the what of your who? Alara moved closer, her telepathic senses reaching out carefully. Jake flinched as if he'd been touched, even though she was still several feet away. You felt that? Alara said. It wasn't a question. I felt something weird, yeah, Jake admitted. Like a buzzing in my head. What are you doing to me? You have psionic potential, Alara said, her mind racing. Latent, undeveloped, but it's there. That's why you can sense my telepathic touch. But that's not what matters. What matters is the fragments. Fragments of what? Rebecca demanded. Alara's eyes never left Jake. Fragments of consciousness that should not exist in this man's mind. Fragments that belonged to Commander Tavern of the Valkyrie fleet. My bonded husband. Who died 5 years ago, 3 sectors from here. Jake shook his head slowly. Lady, I think you've got me confused with someone else. I've never even met a Valkyrie before today. I'm from Ohio. I fix pipes. That's literally my whole life. Then explain why you have his face, Ilara challenged. Humans and Valkyrie evolved on opposite sides of the galaxy. There is no genetic connection between our species. The odds of random similarity are astronomical. Yet you are identical to him. Exactly identical. Jake looked at Rebecca helplessly. I just have one of those faces? No, Ilara said. You don't understand. This isn't similar. This isn't close. This is perfect. Down to the smallest detail. And combined with the psychic echo I'm sensing, there's only one explanation. Somehow, impossibly, part of Tavern exists inside you. The human delegation erupted in protests and questions. Ilara's guards formed a protective circle around her. And Jake Morrison, a simple maintenance worker who just wanted to finish his shift and grab dinner, found himself at the center of an interstellar incident he couldn't begin to understand. All because he had the wrong face. The station's main conference room had been cleared out in a hurry. Jake sat on one side of the long table, still in his work jumpsuit, feeling completely out of his depth. Across from him sat an actual alien queen, staring at him like he was the answer to some cosmic riddle he didn't even know existed. Rebecca Torres, the station commander, sat between them like a referee. The Valkyrie diplomats whispered among themselves in their musical language. Human security stood by the doors. Everyone was tense. Look, Jake said for what felt like the 100th time, I get that I apparently look like your husband. That's weird, I'll give you that. But I'm just a regular guy. I grew up in Cleveland. I joined the Navy, worked as an engineer for 8 years, got tired of the military life and took this quiet job. That's my whole story. Ilara leaned forward, her alien features somehow both beautiful and unsettling. Then explained the medical scans. A holographic display flickered to life above the table. Jake's brain activity patterns glowed in blue. Next to them, patterns labeled Valkyrie memory encoding showed in green. They matched. Not perfectly but enough to make the doctors go pale. That's impossible, one of the human scientists muttered. He's never had any alien contact. His records are clean. The scans don't lie, a Valkyrie medical officer said. This human possesses latent psionic capabilities. Dormant, yes, but present. And his neural pathways contain imprinted patterns consistent with our memory storage methods. Jake rubbed his face. In English, please? Rebecca turned to him. They're saying you have alien memories somehow encoded in your brain. And you have psychic abilities you never knew about. That's insane. Is it? Ilara asked quietly. You felt my telepathic touch earlier. Most humans can't do that. Jake shifted uncomfortably. I've always been weirdly sensitive to things. Gut feelings that turn out right. Knowing when someone's lying. Dreams that feel too real. I just thought everyone had that. They don't, Ilara said. What you're describing are minor psionic manifestations. Untrained, unconscious but real. She paused. Tell me about the dreams. What dreams? The ones that feel too real. When did they start? Jake thought back. Maybe 5 years ago? Little before that? I started having these weird dreams about flying through space. Not in a ship, just flying. And battles. Huge fleet battles with weapons I'd never seen before. I'd wake up knowing words and languages I'd never heard. The room went very quiet. 5 years ago, Ilara repeated slowly. Tavern died 5 years and 2 months ago. Rebecca pulled up another file. Jake, where were you stationed 5 years ago? Outpost Darwin. Small colony on the edge of the sector. Why? The hologram changed, showing a star map. A red dot marked Outpost Darwin. A blue dot marked the location where Commander Tavern had died. They were close. Very close. 3 months before Tavern's death, Rebecca read from the classified file, he was part of a first contact team investigating a derelict human vessel. The ship was called the Prometheus. It was found drifting near the border zones. When Valkyrie teams boarded it, they found the crew dead and the ship's logs corrupted. The Prometheus was registered as a research vessel, but its actual purpose was classified even from us. What was it researching? Jake asked. Rebecca's expression darkened. Consciousness transfer technology. They were trying to bridge human and alien minds. Create a way to share memories, skills, even entire personalities between species. Jake felt his stomach drop. Please tell me they didn't test that on people. They did. The program was shut down after multiple fatalities. Subjects either died or went completely insane. But one prototype supposedly worked. A device called a consciousness matrix. It could record a being's entire mental pattern and store it. Ilara stood abruptly. Tavern found that ship. He must have found the device. Why would he use it on himself? One of the diplomats asked. Because he knew he was going to die, Ilara said, her voice tight with old pain. Tavern had discovered a conspiracy. Corrupt elements in both our governments working together to sabotage peace efforts. He had proof, names, evidence. And he knew the assassins were closing in. Jake's head was spinning. So your husband used this experimental brain-copying machine to back up his memories before they killed him? It's the only explanation, Rebecca said. But the device must have malfunctioned. Instead of creating a stable copy, it scattered fragments across local space. And I was nearby, Jake finished. So I absorbed them like some kind of psychic antenna. Your latent psionic abilities would have made you particularly receptive, the Valkyrie medical officer confirmed. Over time, those fragments integrated with your own neural pathways. That's why you've been changing. Changing? Jake's voice cracked. What do you mean changing? Ilara pulled up an image. Jake's employee ID photo from 5 years ago. He looked different. His face was similar, but the bone structure was slightly different. His nose had been straighter. His chin less pronounced. The fragments have been reshaping you, Ilara said softly. Slowly molding your appearance to match Tavern's. Influencing your mannerisms. Even your talents. You said you were an engineer in the Navy? Yeah, but I was average. Nothing special. Your recent performance reviews say otherwise. Your supervisor noted that over the past few years, you've developed an almost intuitive understanding of complex systems. You solve problems that stump other engineers. Tavern was one of the finest ship engineers in the Valkyrie fleet, Ilara added. Jake stood up, pacing. This is too much. You're telling me I'm turning into someone else? That I'm not even really me anymore? No, Ilara said firmly. You're still Jake Morrison. The fragments haven't overwritten you. They've integrated with who you are. It's more like you're becoming a blend. Something new. I don't want to be something new. I want to be me. Then help us understand this, Rebecca urged. If what Queen Ilara says is true, if Tavern really did back up evidence of a conspiracy, that information might still be in your head. Buried in those fragments. Jake stopped pacing. You want to dig around in my brain for alien memories? With your consent, Ilara said. I can attempt a deeper telepathic link. Try to access what Tavern stored. But it's not without risk. If I push too hard, I could damage your mind. And if you don't? Then the people who killed my husband get away with it, Ilara said. And whatever they're planning continues. Tavern died protecting that information. If there's any chance it survived in you, we have to try. Jake looked at all the expectant faces around the room. Scientists, diplomats, military officers. All waiting for him to decide. He thought about his simple life. His quiet job. The peace he'd found after leaving the Navy. But he also thought about the dreams. The strange knowledge that appeared in his head. The feeling that he was meant for something more, even though he'd never understood what. Okay, Jake said finally. Let's do it. But if this goes wrong and I end up drooling in a corner, I'm haunting all of you. Ilara almost smiled. Tavern would have made the same joke. Great, Jake muttered. Even my sense of humor isn't my own anymore. They prepared the room for the telepathic link. Jake sat down, trying to calm his racing heart. Ilara moved closer, her alien eyes filled with determination and something else. Hope maybe. Or fear. Ready? She asked. Not even a little bit, Jake admitted. Good. Honesty is important for this. Ilara placed her long fingers on either side of his head. Now try to relax. And whatever you see, don't fight it. Just let it flow. Her mind touched his, and Jake's world exploded into light and memory and impossible visions of a life he'd never lived. The telepathic link hit Jake like a freight train. His vision went white, then exploded into a cascade of images that weren't his own. He saw alien worlds through eyes that weren't his. Felt emotions from a heart that had stopped beating 5 years ago. Heard voices speaking in languages he shouldn't understand but somehow did. A younger Ilara, laughing at something he'd said. The hum of a Valkyrie warship engine. The weight of command responsibility. The terror of knowing death was coming. And then, buried deepest of all, a desperate hope that the truth would survive even if he didn't. Jake gasped and pulled back, breaking the connection. He was drenched in sweat, shaking like a leaf. Ilara stumbled backward, caught by her guards. Her face showed the same shock he felt. "What did you see?" Rebecca demanded. "Everything," Jake whispered. "I saw his whole life. Not all of it, just pieces. But they're in there. All of Tavern's memories, scattered through my head like puzzle pieces." Ilara steadied herself, her eyes wide. "I felt you in there too. Your memories intertwined with his. You're right, Jake. You haven't been erased. You've been merged." One of the Valkyrie diplomats spoke up. "Did you see anything about the conspiracy? Anything we can use?" Jake closed his eyes, trying to sort through the jumble in his head. The Prometheus. Tavern found it 3 months before he died. The ship was dead, crew frozen at their stations. But one system was still active. The consciousness matrix device. It was in the captain's quarters, still powered on. The images came clearer now. Jake could see through Tavern's eyes as he explored the derelict human ship. The horror of finding the dead crew. The curiosity about the strange technology. The moment of realization when he understood what the device could do. He accessed the ship's logs, Jake continued. The Prometheus wasn't just doing random experiments. They were being funded by someone. A shadow group with members in both human and Valkyrie governments. People who didn't want our species cooperating. "Why?" Rebecca asked. "Power," Ilara said bitterly. "Peace means cooperation. Cooperation means shared resources, shared technology, shared influence. There are those in my government who prefer us to remain separate. Superior. And I suspect there are humans who feel the same way." Jake nodded, more memories surfacing. The Prometheus was supposed to create a way to control people. Plant thoughts and loyalties directly into their heads. Make soldiers who'd never question orders. Diplomats who'd sabotage peace talks without even knowing they were doing it. The room erupted in angry murmurs. Rebecca looked sick. "That's a violation of every treaty we have. Every ethical guideline." "The program failed," Jake said. "Or at least they thought it did. Most test subjects died. The ones who survived lost their minds. But the scientists realized they'd learned something valuable. They'd figured out how to record consciousness. Store it. Even if they couldn't transfer it safely, that information alone was dangerous. So they killed the scientists and scuttled the ship," one of the human officers guessed. "Exactly. But they missed one thing. The device survived. And Tavern found it." Ilara's voice was quiet. He knew they were coming for him. He'd uncovered too much. Followed too many money trails. Connected too many dots. The assassins were already on their way when he found the Prometheus. Jake felt the memory rise up, vivid and painful. Tavern standing in that dead ship's captain's quarters, looking at the consciousness matrix device. Making an impossible choice. He used it on himself, Jake said. Recorded everything he knew. Every name, every transaction, every piece of evidence. But the device was damaged. It started to overload. He couldn't control where the recording went. Just scattered. Like throwing a handful of sand into the wind. "And you caught some of those grains?" Rebecca said. "I was on a routine patrol near the border," Jake remembered. His own memory now, not Tavern's. 5 years ago. We got an energy spike warning. Huge burst of exotic particles, origin unknown. Made our instruments go crazy for about 10 minutes, then nothing. We filed a report. Nobody ever followed up. "That was the device burning out," the Valkyrie medical officer said. "Scattering Commander Tavern's consciousness across several light years of space. Most of it was lost. But you, with your latent psionic abilities, absorbed fragments. Your mind has been slowly piecing them together ever since." Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So I'm like a hard drive for a dead guy's memories? That's just great." "You're more than that," Ilara said gently. "You're proof that consciousness can survive beyond death. Beyond biology. And right now, you're the only evidence that this conspiracy exists." "We need names," Rebecca said. "Specifics. Can you access that information, Jake?" Jake tried to focus, diving back into the jumbled memories. It was like searching through a library where all the books had been scattered and pages mixed together. He caught glimpses. Fragments. "There's a Valkyrie admiral. Kathis, I think?" "No, Kethrin. Admiral Kethrin. He was funding the research through shell companies. On the human side there was a corporate executive. Someone high up in the defense industry. Wilson. No, Williams. Leonard Williams." Jake grabbed a datapad and started writing. Names poured out of him, along with locations, dates, transactions. Things he had no way of knowing but Tavern had discovered. This is incredible, one of the diplomats breathed. This is enough to launch full investigations on both sides. It's also enough to get us all killed, Elara warned. If this conspiracy is as deep as Tavern believed, they have people everywhere. The moment we start poking around, they'll know. Then we need to be smart about it, Rebecca said. Gather the evidence quietly. Build an airtight case. Then release everything at once, too big to cover up. Jake felt a sudden chill run down his spine. They already know. Everyone turned to look at him. What do you mean? Elara asked. The medical scans. The telepathic link. We've been broadcasting that something's wrong. That I'm connected to Tavern somehow. Jake stood up, his military training kicking in. If they have people on this station, and they probably do, they'll have noticed the Queen of the Valkyrie Empire personally interrogating a random janitor. They're going to wonder why. Rebecca was already moving to the communications panel. Security, this is Commander Torres. I want a full lockdown of... The explosion cut her off. The lights went out. Emergency alarms shrieked. The floor shook hard enough to knock people off their feet. Jake hit the ground and rolled, instincts from his Navy days taking over. What was that? Someone shouted. Another explosion. Closer this time. The conference room door buckled inward. Elara's guards formed a protective circle around her. Human security drew weapons. And Jake, unarmed and untrained for combat, felt something strange happening in his head. Tavern's memories weren't just passive information anymore. They were active. Tactical assessments flooded his mind. Escape routes. Combat formations. Weak points in station architecture. The maintenance tunnels, Jake said suddenly. Level 3, Section B. There's an access point behind the wall panel. They won't think to watch it. How do you know that? Rebecca asked. Because I clean those tunnels every day. And because Tavern's tactical training is telling me it's our best shot. The door exploded inward. Armed figures in unmarked armor poured through, weapons raised. Down? Elara's chief guard shouted. Energy weapons lit up the room. Jake grabbed the nearest person, a young human scientist, and dragged her behind cover. His hands moved on autopilot, muscle memory from training he'd never received guiding his actions. We need to move now. Jake yelled over the weapons fire. Follow me. He didn't wait to see if anyone listened. He just ran toward the wall panel he knew was there, the one he'd painted over just last week. His fingers found the hidden release. The panel popped open, revealing a narrow access tunnel beyond. Come on, Jake urged. Elara was right behind him, her guards covering their retreat. Rebecca and a handful of others followed. Behind them, the firefight continued. They plunged into the darkness of the maintenance tunnels. Jake led the way, knowing every turn and junction by heart. Behind them, shouts and weapons fire echoed through the station. The conspiracy had made its move. And now Jake and Elara were running for their lives through the guts of Meridian 7, carrying secrets that could change everything. If they survived long enough to tell anyone. The maintenance tunnels were Jake's territory. He'd spent 5 years crawling through these cramped spaces, fixing leaks and replacing worn-out circuits. Every junction, every access hatch, every shortcut was burned into his memory. Now that knowledge was keeping them alive. Left here, Jake whispered, guiding the group through a narrow passage that required them to crouch. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit echoed through the metal corridors. Their attackers were tracking them, but they were slower. They didn't know these tunnels like Jake did. Elara moved close behind him, surprisingly agile for someone in royal robes. Her guards flanked them, weapons ready. Rebecca and 3 other survivors from the conference room brought up the rear. Where are we going? Rebecca asked between breaths. Away from them for starters, Jake said. After that, I'm making this up as I go. They emerged into a wider maintenance bay. Jake checked the area, then motioned everyone inside. He sealed the hatch behind them and started jamming the electronic lock with a trick he'd learned years ago. That'll slow them down maybe 5 minutes, Jake said, wiping sweat from his forehead. We need a plan. The plan is survival, one of Elara's guards said. We need to get Her Majesty off this station immediately. They'll have the docking bays locked down, Rebecca countered. Every exit will be watched. Jake paced the small space, his mind racing. Except it wasn't just his mind anymore. Tavern's tactical training kept surfacing, offering strategies and solutions. It was getting harder to tell where Jake's thoughts ended and the borrowed memories began. The central communications hub, Jake said suddenly. It's in the core of the station. Hardened against attack. If we can get there, we can broadcast everything. Send all the evidence to both human and Valkyrie governments simultaneously. We don't have all the evidence organized, Rebecca pointed out. Just bits and pieces that Jake remembered. It'll be enough to start investigations, Elara said. Once people start looking, they'll find more. The conspiracy can only hide if nobody's searching. An explosion rocked the maintenance bay. Their pursuers had found them. Move! Jake shouted. They ran through a series of connecting tunnels. Jake's hands worked on autopilot, opening hatches and bypassing security locks without conscious thought. It should have been impossible. He was a maintenance worker, not a security expert. But Tavern had been both an engineer and a military commander. That knowledge was bleeding through. They rounded a corner and came face to face with 3 armed mercenaries. Jake's body reacted before his brain caught up. He ducked under the first weapon blast, grabbed a loose pipe from the wall and swung it in a wide arc. The impact sent one attacker stumbling backward. Elara's guards opened fire, driving the others into cover. Jake stared at his hands, shocked. I didn't know I could do that. Tavern's combat training, Elara said. It's becoming more active. The stress is triggering deeper integration. They kept moving, but Jake could feel something changing inside his head. The memories weren't just passive information anymore. They were merging with his instincts, his reflexes, his very thoughts. When he looked at the station's layout, he saw it through 2 sets of eyes at once. Jake's practical knowledge of the maintenance systems and Tavern's strategic assessment of defensive positions. Are you all right? Elara asked, noticing him stumble. I don't know, Jake admitted. It's like there's 2 people in my head and they're starting to blur together. I can't tell where I end and he begins. Fight it, one of the guards urged. Don't let the foreign consciousness take over. No, Elara said sharply. Don't fight it, Jake. That's what killed the test subjects on the Prometheus. They tried to resist the integration and it tore their minds apart. You have to accept it. Let it happen. Easy for you to say, Jake muttered. You're not the one losing yourself. You're not losing yourself, Elara insisted. You're becoming more. Both Jake Morrison and Tavern. Something neither of you could be alone. Another group of mercenaries appeared ahead of them. This time Jake didn't hesitate. His body moved with fluid precision, using techniques he'd never learned but somehow knew perfectly. He disarmed one attacker with a move straight from Valkyrie military training, then used Jake's intimate knowledge of the station to kick a wall panel loose, triggering a steam vent that forced the enemies back. It was working. The 2 minds were synchronizing, combining human adaptability with alien expertise. They reached a vertical shaft leading up toward the station's core. Jake looked at the ladder and made a split-second decision. We can't all climb fast enough, he said. Rebecca, take 2 guards and go up. Get to the communications hub. I'll buy you time. That's suicide, Rebecca protested. No, it's strategy, Jake said, and his voice sounded different. More confident. More commanding. Tavern spent his career outthinking superior forces. I know how they think. How they move. I can slow them down long enough for you to transmit. Elara grabbed his arm. I'm not leaving you. You have to, Jake said, looking directly into her alien eyes. If we both die here, Tavern's sacrifice meant nothing. The conspiracy wins. The evidence disappears. He's right, one of the guards said reluctantly. Elara's face showed anguish, but she nodded. Don't you dare die on me again. Jake smiled, and it was strange how natural it felt. Like he'd smiled at her 1,000 times before in another life. I'll do my best. Rebecca and the others started climbing. Jake turned to face the pursuing mercenaries, his mind calm despite the danger. He could feel Tavern's tactical genius working through scenarios, calculating odds, finding advantages in the environment. The mercenaries appeared at the end of the corridor, weapons raised. Jake stood alone, unarmed, a janitor in a dirty jumpsuit facing professional killers. But he wasn't really alone. And he wasn't really just a janitor anymore. You know what the difference is between humans and most other species? Jake called out to the attackers. We adapt. We improvise. We take the impossible and make it work. His hand hit a wall panel. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, dividing the corridor into sections and cutting off half the mercenary force. Jake grabbed a fire extinguisher and used it as a weapon and smokescreen simultaneously. He fought like no human should be able to fight, using alien combat techniques mixed with street fighting improvisation. A blast caught him in the shoulder. Pain exploded through his body, but he kept moving. He led the survivors on a chase through the maintenance levels, using every trick he knew. Flooding corridors. Cutting power. creating dead ends and false trails. All the while, he could feel something happening in his mind. The final barriers between Jake Morrison and Tavern were dissolving. Not one consuming the other but both becoming something new. A hybrid consciousness that thought in two languages simultaneously. That saw problems through the lens of human creativity and Valkyrie logic. Above him, he could sense Alara climbing toward the communications hub. The bond between them was reforming, stronger than before. Different but real. He could feel her fear for him, her determination to finish the mission. Jake rounded a corner and came face to face with the leader of the mercenaries. The man raised his weapon, but Jake was faster. His psionic abilities, dormant for so long, suddenly flared to life. He didn't just sense the man's intentions. He pushed. A crude, untrained telepathic shove that sent the mercenary stumbling backward in confusion. "That's new," Jake gasped. The combination of Tavern's psionic expertise and Jake's raw potential was creating abilities neither species had shown before. Human creativity meeting Valkyrie mental discipline. An alarm echoed through the station. Rebecca had reached the hub. The transmission was starting. Jake smiled through the pain of his wounded shoulder. They'd done it. The truth was getting out. Now he just had to survive long enough to see what came next. Jake pressed his back against the cold metal wall, clutching his wounded shoulder. Blood seeped through his fingers, but the pain felt distant somehow. Tavern's memories included battlefield injuries far worse than this. His mind kept telling him to push through, keep moving, finish the mission. The station-wide alarm had shifted from emergency klaxons to a steady broadcast tone. Rebecca's voice echoed through every speaker in Meridian 7. "Attention all personnel. This is Commander Rebecca Torres. A conspiracy involving members of both human and Valkyrie leadership has been exposed. Evidence is now being transmitted to all major governments and news networks. The individuals responsible for the assassination of Commander Tavern and the illegal consciousness transfer experiments are being identified." Jake allowed himself a brief smile. They'd actually pulled it off. The truth was out there now, spreading too fast and too wide to stop. But the mercenaries weren't giving up. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. They were closing in, probably figuring if they couldn't stop the transmission, they could at least eliminate the witnesses. Jake looked around the maintenance junction. He knew every pipe, every circuit, every structural weakness. His hands moved almost on their own, opening panels and rerouting power conduits. Tavern's engineering expertise combined with Jake's practical experience created solutions neither could have managed alone. He rigged a nasty surprise with the electrical systems and kept moving upward, following the path Alara had taken. The bond between them pulled at him like a compass pointing home. It was fully formed now, he realized. Not the same bond she'd shared with Tavern, but something unique to them. He could feel her presence above him, her relief that the transmission had succeeded, her fear for his safety. An explosion below told him the mercenaries had found his electrical trap. That would buy him a few more minutes. Jake climbed the last ladder to the communications hub level. His shoulders screamed in protest with every rung, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Not when he was this close. He emerged into the corridor outside the hub. The heavy security doors were sealed tight. Rebecca's voice still broadcast from the speakers, now reading off names and evidence in a calm, steady tone that made the damning information even more powerful. "Jake." Alara rushed to him the moment the doors opened. Her hands immediately went to his wounded shoulder, her alien features twisted in concern. "You're hurt." "I've had worse," Jake said, then paused. "Actually no, I haven't. But Tavern did, and the memories make it easier to handle." One of the guards was already pulling out medical supplies. Rebecca looked up from the communications console, relief evident on her face. The transmission went out to every major network. Human, Valkyrie, even the neutral systems. "There's no putting this back in the box." "What's the response?" Jake asked as the guard sprayed medical foam on his shoulder. The pain faded to a dull ache. "Chaos mostly," Rebecca said with grim satisfaction. "But good chaos. Emergency sessions of Parliament are being called on 3 worlds. The Valkyrie High Council is demanding investigations. Admiral Catherine has already been placed under house arrest. Leonard Williams is in custody. Others are scrambling to destroy evidence or flip on their partners. It's falling apart," one of the other survivors said. "The whole conspiracy is collapsing." Jake leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, and with it came the full weight of what had happened. He'd gone from mopping floors to being at the center of an intergalactic incident. His DNA had been rewritten. His mind had merged with a dead alien commander. His entire identity had been transformed in a matter of hours. "How are you feeling?" Elara asked quietly, moving closer to him. "Honestly? I have no idea." Jake looked at his hands. They were the same hands that had held a mop this morning, but they didn't feel like his anymore. "I'm not the same person I was yesterday. I'm not even sure who I am now." "You're Jake Morrison," Elara said firmly. "With everything that makes you who you are. Your humor, your kindness, your practical thinking. Those things didn't come from Tavern. They're yours. But I'm also part Tavern now. I have his memories, his skills, his way of seeing the world. How do I separate what's mine from what's his?" "Maybe you don't," Elara suggested. "Maybe that's not the point. You're not Jake pretending to be Tavern or Tavern wearing Jake's face. You're both. Something new. Something that's never existed before." Jake thought about that. The way his mind worked now, seeing problems from multiple angles simultaneously. The way he could think in two languages at once. The strange comfort of Tavern's memories existing alongside his own childhood in Cleveland, his Navy service, his quiet years on the station. "The Prometheus experiments failed because they tried to overwrite," Jake said slowly, working through the idea. "They tried to erase the original person and replace them. But that's not what happened to me. Tavern's fragments didn't replace me. They joined me. Merged with me." "Exactly," Elara said. "Your psionic abilities acted like a bridge, letting two consciousnesses integrate naturally instead of fighting for control. You're proof that it can work. That minds can combine and create something greater than either part alone." Rebecca looked up from her console. "Station security is reporting the mercenaries have retreated. With the evidence public, there's no point in continuing the attack. They're cutting their losses." The tension in the room eased slightly. They'd survived. More than that, they'd won. But Jake knew the real challenges were just beginning. "What happens now?" he asked. "To me, I mean. I'm a human with alien memories and developing psychic powers. I'm a walking security risk and a scientific anomaly. Both governments are going to want to study me, interrogate me, maybe lock me away." "Not if I have anything to say about it," Elara said, her voice taking on the commanding tone of a queen. "You're under my personal protection. Anyone who wants to harm you or exploit you will have to go through the entire Valkyrie fleet." "And the human government," Rebecca added. "What you did today saved both our species from a conspiracy that would have led us to war eventually. You're a hero, Jake. Not a lab specimen." Jake laughed weakly. "I'm really not hero material. I'm just a guy who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or maybe the right place at the right time. I still can't tell which." "You're more than that," Elara said. She took his hand and Jake felt the soul bond between them resonate. It was strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. "You're proof that the barriers between species aren't as solid as we thought. That understanding and cooperation can go deeper than treaties and trade agreements." "So what, I become some kind of ambassador?" Jake asked. "I don't even have a college degree. I fix toilets for a living." "You have the memories and expertise of one of the finest commanders in the Valkyrie fleet," Elara pointed out. "Combined with a human perspective and creativity, that makes you uniquely qualified to bridge our peoples. Plus you're the only person in the galaxy who can literally see both sides of any issue," Rebecca added with a slight smile. Jake considered it. His old life was gone, that much was clear. He couldn't go back to being just a maintenance worker, not with everything he now carried inside his head. The question was what he would become instead. He looked at Elara, feeling the bond between them. It wasn't the same as what she'd shared with Tavern. This was new, built on their own experiences together. Jake Morrison and Queen Elara, the janitor and the queen, brought together by impossible circumstances. "All right," Jake said finally. "I'll do it. I'll be your bridge builder, your ambassador, whatever you want to call it. But on one condition." "What's that?" Elara asked. "Somebody else has to clean the toilets from now on. I'm officially retiring from maintenance work." Elara actually laughed, a sound of pure relief and joy. "I think that can be arranged." Outside the windows of the communications hub, ships from both human and Valkyrie fleets were arriving. Investigators, diplomats, reporters. The galaxy was watching now, waiting to see what came next. Jake Morrison, the janitor who became something more, stood beside an alien queen and faced an uncertain future. He had Tavern's courage and Jake's stubbornness. Valkyrie wisdom and human adaptability. The memories of two lives woven into one consciousness. He wasn't just Jake anymore. But he wasn't not Jake either. He was something new. Something the universe had never seen before. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what both species needed.